We're live. This is Dave with a special public service announcement on a cyber chat. It's March 15th, 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time, and hot off the press, the government has admitted that they're dumbing us down. I've got up on screen a press release that came out 45 minutes ago. Suppressed government report finding fluoride can reduce children's IQ made public under EPA lawsuit. This is courtesy Fluoride Action Network, who filed a lawsuit with other complainants and have been working this suit for years now. There was an overlap with the pandemic, so to speak, and the government did a lot of can kicking and suppression tactics to prevent this report from being used as evidence within the trial. I'm just going to read an excerpt here. The final report of a 6-year National Toxicology Program review of fluoride neurotoxicity was blocked from public release by the Health and Human Services Assistant Administrator in May 2022, according to the Fluoride Action Network, but under an agreement reached in an ongoing lawsuit against the Environmental Protection Agency. The report was made public today with a table of contents. Included were comments from external peer reviewers and internal Health and Human Services departments, along with the NTP, National Toxicology Program, responses. The review considered all human studies of fluoride's effect on the developing brain. Its conclusion confirmed and strengthened the findings, which have been promoted by many people in the truth community, by the way, from 2 earlier drafts released in 2019 and 2020.
Have you ever wondered?
External peer reviewers all agreed with the conclusion that prenatal and early life fluoride exposures can reduce IQ. The report was issued in 2 parts, a monograph and a meta-analysis. The meta-analysis found that that's an analysis of analyses, right? So they collate the different conclusions of the individual studies and found that 52 of 55 studies found lower IQ with higher fluoride exposures, demonstrating remarkable consistency. Of the 19 studies rated higher quality, 18 of those found lowering of IQ. The meta-analysis could not detect any safe exposure, including at levels common from drinking artificially fluoridated water. Now, this has been known for a long time. This is really not news. What's news is that this is being allowed in court as admissible evidence and was suppressed by the EPA. Now, why would they suppress this information? They're called the Environmental Protection Agency. Aren't they trying to protect the environment for those who live in it? And if you are learned on the fluoride fraud, you know, if you've done any activism in this space, you go to city council or your local water board, they lean on the EPA's maximum allowable contaminant level for fluoride in order that they justify the safe level of fluoride that they put in the water supply. So in other words, the EPA says it would be a problem if the MCL, the maximum contaminant level, is over 4 parts per million. Well, the water boards put like 1 or just less than 1 part per million. And so they say this is the safe level. Not only is it safe, but it's a benefit. It's a medicinal agent intended to prevent a disease, which is cavities, dental cavities. And any kind of local upswelling organic response opposing the fluoridation policy is met with that block of the EPA. And that's how they essentially hide behind the EPA's guidelines. And then they also rely on these dubious studies promoted by the Health and Human Services Department attesting to the medical benefits of fluoridating water. And so they sit in this little middle ground where they're protected. Well, if this comes out and people recognize that there is no safe level of fluoride and that it does, even in small amounts, reduce IQ, especially prenatal and early life development when your brain is growing fastest, I mean, there should be outrage. There should literally be outrage. My whole activist journey with fluoride started when I was diagnosed with dental fluorosis. And that's the degradation of the enamel of your teeth caused by overfluoridation and overfluoride consumption. And when I started to dig into it, I discovered a study done in collaboration with Duke and the World Health Organization. I'm having trouble finding it right now, but they essentially turned the fluoride off for 11 months, and then they sent surveys home to look at everybody's teeth at these key developmental points to see if, hey, cavities exploded. Not only is it like unethical to just experiment on the public like that through the water supply, but they weren't even able to find the evidence that they really wanted to find, which was that it was actually preventing tooth decay. The conclusion was it didn't prevent tooth decay, but we did see a lowering of dental fluorosis, which means people's enamel were stronger after turning the fluoride off for 11 months. And so you didn't hear much about this study because it didn't reinforce the presupposed benefit by the HHS. But I found it and took it to city council, and they're just like, they don't even care that, like, the ethical problem of experimenting on the school children and using them essentially as guinea pigs to again, reinforce your own government policy, which there's big money in. Also, I wanted, not only people to check this out, go over to Fluoride Action Network, read up on this, share it on social media, etc. But I also wanted to touch on something we touched on our last episode 41. At the very end of the show, we highlighted some tweets we made on our official Twitter responding to Elon Musk about some statements he made regarding Fauci and his betrayal of the public trust. And I'm going to play that clip at the end of this stream, but the high level gestalt, which I think is underscored by this fluoride development, is that the HHS, the EPA, the FDA, they can call themselves whatever they want. It is true, though, that they're a biowarfare operation, an extension of the military-industrial complex, and they name themselves these benevolent, helpful, positive health and human services. Seems so benign, right? But they do that on purpose to sort of whitewash what they're actually doing, which is covert, clandestine, chemical, biological warfare. And here they are admitting they've been dumbing down the public. They can't deny it anymore. And but I guess they're just going to keep saying safe and effective, safe and effective, safe and effective. Aren't you glad you don't have any cavities? Oh, wait, you do. Well, maybe you should stop eating sugar. It's your fault. We don't have anything to do with it. Even though they stake this huge claim, and you've got oral health section chiefs in your state government making $180,000 salaries a year, basically going around doing the bidding of the dental lobby, which on its face should raise red flags for people, right? If the dentists were really implementing this and supporting this health achievement of the 20th century that eradicated cavities, how come their industry is growing? They didn't solve the problem, and nor would they really want to. It's kind of like the problem with the medical industry. It's profiting off of exacerbating the illness. I mean, that's just how do you grow the revenue if you're curing people? So they don't. But anyways, this was posted by, shout out to Timothy Lastly on Twitter, highlighting Robert Kennedy and Jimmy Dore's conversation about Fauci in charge of developing bioweapons for the Pentagon since 2002, 2014. And we've talked about this so many times on the show. The whole Wuhan thing is such a whitewash for what we're actually doing here on our soil. Other terrestrial governments they're working together, but not for anybody but themselves and against the people who ostensibly are funding it, through the fraudulent financial system. But I want to play this clip where we talk about the long-standing history of the HHS being a clandestine biowarfare operation. And if people knew that, figures like Fauci and these other people in the fluoride lobby, you should never have trust in them to begin with, because they are working for an organization that has a long-standing history in, attacking the people. Also, the other tie-in, which I don't think I mentioned in this clip, is that what I'll talk about in the clip, the Federal Security Agency and the War Research Service, the head of the Federal Security Agency when fluoride was implemented in the 50s, his name was Oscar Ewing, and he retired here in North Carolina and started to set up the Research Triangle Park, which is really kind of Smart City 1.0, if you want to think about it that way. Brought in, homeowners associations, all these fascist zoning boards and corporate interests that, are squeezing us into tighter and tighter, more controlled populations. So let's listen to the end of episode 41, where we talk about this HHS biowarfare operation, and check out that report. I'll put the link in the description. Share this video and the report, and dig into that lawsuit. It's pretty big. That is reminding me of a tweet we made on our official Twitter. I'm trying to find it now, but it was in response to something Elon Musk said. And this gets to the sort of society of presumption we talked about before. Elon replied to this thing about Fauci and how, published by Newsweek, how Fauci fooled America. And Elon comes in here and says, exactly, Fauci egregiously betrayed the public trust. And, my reply to that was basically, well, how did he...
how is he able to do that?
How did he betray the trust in the first place? Like, why did we trust him, and with what? And the presupposition here is that, because he works for the National Institute of Health and the Department of Health and Human Services and Center for Disease Control, all these like Orwellian terms, that it's a positive thing for you, but in reality, if you look into the history of the Department of Health and Human Services, it always was essentially an appendage of this massive government largesse called the Federal Security Agency, which later basically splintered into all these little individual government companies that have their own Orwellian name rather than just blanket Federal Security Agency. But
it became Social Security,
Department of Education,
Department of
you name it.
Food and Drug Administration.
Food and Drug Administration came out of this. Okay, this massive largesse, and
it was originally like the War Research Service.
Correct. So I put some they still have this on Wikipedia. I mean, it's like so in your face. But it says secretly the Federal Security Agency was also a cover agency from this is the whitewash, from 1942 to 1944, for the War Research Service, a secret program to develop chemical and biological weapons.
Boom.
And I guess the idea is, well, if we know what will kill you, then we must know what's good for you too, because they eventually rebranded the whole thing Department of Health and Human Services. But interestingly, the original head of this War Research Service was George W. Merck. And I guess my point here is this supposition society, you know, whether it's theology or science or what, pick your topic, right? We are a society of presumption, and the presumption, Department of Health and Human Services, is like they're a benevolent force trying to like help you out. Right. And so he really didn't betray the trust. People misplaced their trust in him to begin with,
right,
because of these Orwellian names and their lack of knowledge about the background.
He took advantage of people's ignorance.
Yes,
is more proper.
Absolutely.
Betraying the public trust implies that there was a transparency of information to be trusted.
Right.
There was not.
Right. And so my point to Elon here is, you know, until we can, you know, oh, you want to grandstand and hot dog on your own Twitter platform, you know, to look like a good guy, right?
As if this guy doesn't betray the public trust.
Right.
Oh,
but like to get on that what do you call it? That outrage bandwagon against Fauci. It's like, if you don't call out this background, this infrastructure, this huge largesse that just needs to basically be dismantled, you're just going to get another little Fauci character. And there are all sorts of little public health ministers jockeying for position within this power structure who dress just like him and, you know, put a bow tie on and their little spectacle glasses and white coat and can, you know, do the dance in front of the TV. You know, that's what they're basically media, like you call it the occult thespian network. And that's
because that doesn't just mean like Michael Douglas the Game and crisis actors. It means people who have an ulterior motive and are misrepresenting their true role in the public eye.
Right.
That they have NDAs, they've got who knows what other, you know, leverage on them, and they're performing a role, you know, and I think that Adam's right when he says that the whole Ye Fuentes, you know, thing was sort of a
controlled op from the beginning.
Yeah, just sort of an astroturf, like kind of flop fest, just like January 6th. You know, that whole rigmarole of, oh well, you know, it was a velvet rope revolution, basically. You know, the insurrectionists posed for photos, and they had a few laughs, they had a few prayers, and the politicos just got to come in the next morning and resume their putsch. It's the same thing with this. It's like,
it's more,
oh, this is supposed to be the guy who's standing up to the centralization of media and entertainment by like wearing a
it just creates more psychological support for censorship, basically.
Precisely. And it's, you know, all the stuff that they're trying to pass down in Florida with the hate speech laws and stuff. Oh, if a deputy finds a flyer on the ground nearby where you're walking, and he doesn't think that it's very nice to a certain group of people, well, not only is it a $200 littering fine,
I've said it before,
it's a 5-year felony imprisonment. I mean,
if silence is violence, well, then we're fucked. Because, you know?
Yeah, well, yeah. Silence is violence, speech is violence, just
breathing is violence, apparently, because of CO2.
Breathing,
actually, farting is violence.
Farting is violence. Breathing is violence. Thinking is violence.
Yeah.